Good morning, good morning, and happy Saturday. Happy Saturday, advocates. Happy Saturday, Mr. Man. We're here because we are every
Frozen.
Saturday partner agencies to bring you
Kim, you're frozen.
the equitable. Oh gosh. Okay, let's pick it up, somebody.
So we would like to welcome our guests this morning. Welcome school board members, Candance Chow, former members, Debra Hill, Omar Brown, and welcome advocates and Jennifer Moran with Evanston Cradle to Career. We would like for our school board members to share their experiences with us about what it means to be in the school board and what challenges there were, what was rewarding. So I think we'll start first with our first guest, Debra Hill.
Betty, can I just jump in real quick? Because I just have and Debra, thank you so much for being here, all of you. I just want to explain a little bit about the Public Service Challenge, and then we're going to get to our specific topic. I just really want to take a moment of gratitude. This is our last broadcast on the radio after a series of 3 weeks where we discussed how to run a campaign and finance a campaign, as well as city and local city government service. And today we are focusing on board service. And the Public Service Challenge is something that we used to do in person. And with the challenges of COVID, we had to be agile and we had to pivot and provide an online workshop, basically. And we just want to take a moment to say to all of our partners that help make this possible, the Evanston branch of the NAACP, Evanston Latinos, the League of Women Voters, EPHS Parents Engaged, and also the PTA Council for District 65. We could never have done it without their support, and also for Alicia Healy, who was the person who put together all the productions, and then most especially the amazing volunteer time and energy that our guests who are on the videos provided for us, their expertise and the time they took to really sit down and really discuss the roles and the kind of the process of being connected to the school board and the superintendent and working in public service in the District 65 and 202. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for that. I think that they all turned out really beautifully, and they sit on our website, the Evanston Community Foundation's website, evanstonforever.org. Please go ahead and take a look at whatever might interest you. I think you have until the 14th of December to file petitions or to collect signatures, and then the week after to file your petition to get on the ballot. We really would love to see more people engaged in board service. We hope that Debra, Candance, and Omar will help infuse a sense of real responsibility and excitement, and the importance of really, especially in this particularly challenging time, of people really committed to the young people in our district. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Betty, and you can introduce again, or just start up the conversation, but really, really grateful to the incredible partnerships. And this is something that I've heard over and over again, that we took this effort together. It's not usual, and I think it's something to be really highlighted, that we have put this together, and we really are committed to making sure that people can run successful and with the information they need to really get on the ballot and make a difference in our community. So thanks, Betty. I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So Ms. Hill, can you please talk to us a little bit about your experience that you had as a school board member and anything that you would like us to know about what we can do as a community and what our families and other members can do?
Good morning, everyone, and I'm just delighted to be a part of this process and a part of this program. The first thing I have to do is offer a disclaimer. I have never been on the school board in Evanston. I've never been on a school board. However, I have worked with school boards for probably the last 20 plus, well, even longer than that. We don't even want to go into how long it's been. First, as an administrator in District 65, where I was an administrator for 24 years, including assistant superintendent, interim superintendent, and acting superintendent. So, of course, from the employment standpoint, I worked very closely with the school board. I've been an Evanston resident for a little bit more than 50 years. So I've been here quite a bit, quite a long time. But I think that what I bring to this particular panel discussion is my experience and expertise in terms of working with school boards, because I'm currently the managing director of BWP and Associates, which is a national search firm. And that's what we do. We go out and search to try to make the perfect match between a school board and a superintendent. I've been doing this for about the last 16 years, and I've been the managing director for the last 6 years. So again, I've done superintendent searches across the country. Most recently, I'm working right now in Bloomington, Indiana. I just completed DeKalb County in Atlanta, Georgia. I've done across the country. So I think it's fitting for me to kind of kick this discussion off because of the relationship between the school board, the community, and the superintendent. And again, this is what I do. My kids tell me I don't know how to retire because this is what I'm doing in my retirement. So having said that, I did a little research, and a gal named Lena Einstein, who's the manager for content strategy and Diligent Corporation, had some key pointers about school boards. First of all, serving on a school board requires a commitment, taking a great amount of time and dedication. So if you've got a whole lot of other stuff going on in your life, being a school board member may not be quite what you want to go for right now. It's a wonderful non-paid job, which requires a lot of diligence and a lot of learning. And I think for me, that's the exciting part. Again, most recently, I've worked with the Evanston School Board in the selection of your new current superintendent. And one of the advantages to being a member of the community and having worked in this community and having interacted with Evanston school boards, both District 65 and 202, is I brought a little bit of a different insight that then could be shared with superintendent candidates with regards to my town, my city. Let me tell you how my people act and what you might be looking for. So what we find in Evanston is a very engaged, very sophisticated level of school board members. Again, willing to lead and learn. Those are kind of a couple of key pieces. The school board governs the school district. The school board only has one employee, and that's the school superintendent. So one of the most important jobs that they have is to select the right person at the right time. And if we all consider that the goal is the best education possible for the children of our community, and everybody keeps that in mind, that's the plan, then a lot of the activities that occur after that are then in concert as opposed to being in conflict. And so that's a critical piece. People join the school board for a number of different reasons. One of the concerns is that when people come in with the single agenda focus, it tends not to work out as well. So when people are considering being a member of the school board, you're coming into a situation where you not only have your child or your neighbor's child or your grandchild's interest at heart, but you're looking at the children in the community as a whole. And again, some people don't think about separating that. I'll give you a concrete example. When I was in District 65, one of the interesting aspects of school board members were some people joined the school board because they didn't like the school calendar. And so consequently, they ran for school board, and one of the first things they wanted to do was change the school calendar because they like to start school after Labor Day. But then you had other members of the board who liked to start school before Labor Day. And what neither one of those individuals understood was, first of all, it wasn't a board decision. It was an administrative decision. So in terms of separating roles, The difference between school board and the superintendent or the administration is one of the high points. The second thing that board members did not know are the complications relative to developing the school calendar. Contrary to popular belief, you just don't sit down and X out before Labor Day or after Labor Day. There are state regulations with regards to developing a school calendar, and you have to take those into consideration. Then you have people who wanted to have certain holidays or not have certain holidays. Then you have to have a certain number of institute and in-service days, and so that's impacted by the union and the teachers. And then you have to have parent consideration in terms of daycare and other school activities. So the crafting of a school calendar, again, some people joined the school board because they wanted to fix the calendar and didn't recognize that that wasn't a part of their responsibility. And so they were a little bit disappointed when they got into that role, if that was their agenda. So the lesson learned here is being a school board member is not an I-focused agenda. It's about the we. And just as a school superintendent, which I ended up being in Glenview, Northbrook for about 7 years, school board members, if you have one child, two children, no children, neighbors' kids, have to recognize that all of the children in the district are now yours. And so as a parent, as a grandparent, as a neighbor, you have to keep the consideration of what's going to be best for all the children in mind when you're discussing school board issues and policies. The next point I wanted to make is that the role of the school board is to set policy. You hire a superintendent that you trust, you develop a relationship with that superintendent, and you set the goals that you want to see accomplished, and then you get out of the way. You let the superintendent and the staff that you've hired take that direction and then move it forward. Now, of course, you need to be informed at all levels. Your thoughts and opinions need to be considered. But again, that's not your job. Your job is to create the policy and give someone else the ball to run with it. So in terms of that, you're the coach, not the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And so that is another aspect of the superintendent of the board's role. I think we've been very fortunate in Evanston in the 54 years that I've been here, in that we've had very, very committed school board members. They haven't always agreed, but it's okay to disagree when you're not being disagreeable. And we've had some situations in Evanston where the community has come out and really rattled some cages. I remember one point where there was some discussion about an issue and somebody brought in a casket to make their point. Oh. And so we in Evanston are very creative in terms of how we respond to various issues. And that was one of the things I talked with candidates for the District 65 position to say, again, you're working with a very sophisticated community. You cannot come in and not be visible. You cannot come in and not be communicative. You cannot come in and not be transparent when you're working with this district. In some other places that might go, but here it's not. So, you need to come in with kind of that aspect. And then finally, it's the connection with the community. As a school board member, you are representing, again, the entire community, not your block, not your neighborhood, not your ward, but the entire community. And when a school board comes together and everybody has that recognition that you're all on the same page, you're all working towards the benefit of all the children in the district, we can have a fabulous educational system and program, and our kids, who are going to be in charge in our retirement, will be well educated, well placed, and globally accepting of the community and civic responsibilities that we want them to be successful in. So I was told I had 5 minutes. I was trying to keep it in that. So I could go on and talk about this forever. But again, I think we need to encourage school board members to sign up to do this audacious and awesome task. However, to come into it recognizing what the variables are and what the guidelines are and what the signposts are, rather than coming into it thinking that they're just going to automatically be able to change something they don't like about the district.
Well, Ms. Hill, thank you. I'm back. and thank you, advocates, for picking up. My internet is a little stressed today. I think maybe some of us know how that feels. Ms. Hill, thank you so much for that. And let me just say, your role in helping select a superintendent, I think you guys did a fabulous job. We are excited about our new superintendent. So thank you. I don't know if I'm frozen again. If I am, okay. If I am, somebody pick up. But yeah, we are really excited about that. So thank you for giving us a complete overview. If you joined us and like, what are y'all talking about today? We are talking about school board. School board, the roles, the responsibilities, elections are coming up. So we really want folks to get involved. This is part 3 of the Public Service Challenge. So we are talking school board elections. So thank you all for joining us. Please share this, not just if you have kids. If you're an Evanston resident, the school board should be important to you. Our children are our future. So you are investing in the future when you're investing in our children. So we want to make sure we have a great school board for them. So we're going to ask Candance Chow to come on and talk about her experience on the school board and give us some insight for people who might be thinking about becoming a candidate or supporting a candidate or voting and voting.
Great, thank you, Kimberly. So I am Candance Chow. I served on the District 65 school board for 2 terms. From 2013, I guess, to 2020. And I had the good fortune to kind of build on what Ms. Hill had said, to work with her as part of this most recent, kind of process for bringing on a new superintendent. I was involved in 2 superintendent searches, and so that is definitely one of the most important and critical roles the school board plays as a team, and working together to identify the person that's going to best fit the school district and best serve the community. And that was a great privilege to be involved in both of those processes. So I was on the board about just under 8 years. And, I thought I was prepared from, more of a professional background standpoint. I had some skills that I thought could be useful. I would echo the part of, coming into deciding to run for school board needs to be both a personal reflection on kind of your passion for education, and also what can you add, right? What can you bring to the table, and both your personal perspective, but skills, etc. And at the end of the day, to the point that Debra had made about not a single agenda, the role of the board member, any board member, school board or not, is a governance role. It's like, and what does that mean? That means we kind of operate at the level of what are the values that we want to embrace and continue and grow for the school district. How do you translate those values into kind of high level priorities? And how do you allocate resources, right? And then how do you delegate to the administration for everything else? So I guess I would caution folks. At first I thought, well, I'm not an educator, right? I had kids in the school district. I was involved in tutoring and seeing, families at all different levels and building relationships. So I had that perspective, but I wasn't an educator by training. And so, but I think that, we need all kinds of folks in the board, because honestly, it's great to have that professional experience, but you're also not there to be an educator. You're there to operate at a different level and rely on the team of your professionals to build out the plan, to execute the plan. And kind of where our role is to define those values and goals, and then also to figure out how do we hold ourselves accountable, which is really challenging, right? It's what are the ways as a board we hold each other accountable, and we hold the administration accountable for our goals and our the outcomes we want for children and families. So we spent a great deal of time like thinking through that. What does that accountability look like? And I think, you know, the key piece I felt like I learned when I got on the board, I kind of understood the governance versus management piece. But I learned that a lot of what the board does in terms of engaging the community is you need to not only have a set of priorities that are based on what the community wants and needs, but you need to kind of constantly be listening, you know, for voices, and especially focusing on voices, in my case, as a white woman who didn't come from a economically privileged background, but had privilege because I am a white woman. You need to be listening, you know, with that equity lens that we talk about, but what does that really mean? That means that in every decision we made as a board, you got to think about, okay, how is this, who are the other folks that need to weigh in on this decision, are going to be impacted at this decision, but may not be sitting in front of me. You know, they may be sitting in front of me because we have we have a lot of advocates that come to us, but, you know, it's a lot of hubris to think that every family in our district has the ability or wherewithal or time, frankly, to be, you know, out there talking about what they need. They're actually doing what they need for their kids and their families in their homes and in their jobs. So how do you bring those voices, and how do you stop yourself? It's like a lot of times with my kids when I'm like, I'm going to tell you what to do, or I want to spout something, but let me stop first and like question my preconceived notions about what's right or wrong, and, you know, go to those who really are most impacted. So that was a growing process for me, and not saying that I'm perfect by any shape of the imagination, but the one I remember getting a really good piece of advice from former Mayor Morton. This was actually while we were going through the referendum process, which ended up being quite successful, but Dr. Gorin and I went to visit with Mayor Morton to talk to her about the referendum, which happened in 2017, you know, for more resources for schools. And we were just chatting, and she, you know, she's a very chatty and wonderful woman. And then she hit my arm and she said, you know, I watch you on those school board meetings. You're really good, but you need to talk less. And I was like, okay, you're right. You know, I could probably benefit from shutting up and and just listening to others sometimes. And I would say, as a board member, you are there to engage each other. You're there to listen to the folks outside of you, not just in the meeting, but all the time. You know, look for those stakeholders that you might not automatically be in your ear. You bring that to the meeting, to the conversation, and then it's about a dialogue among the board members, right? This is about talking with each other, less about talking out, in my perception, and like putting, you know, my own viewpoints out there as a speech or whatever, but more about trying to force some difficult conversations amongst the board. Because I think the other, beyond hiring a superintendent, the other role that I really believe is important for the board is for us to force difficult conversations, and to force those conversations not only about, here are the things we want to do and we know are valuable. We have limited resources. That's, you know, at the end of the day, that's a challenge, right? You've got $150 some odd $1 million budget, which is not small. So you need to be able to understand that piece. But there's, especially as we look at how we can better serve, you know, our children who are most struggling, there's always new things we can do or try. And we should be experimenting, I believe. I don't think we should continue to say we're going to do the same over things because we're not getting those results. But at the same time, we have to have the conversations not only about the things we want to do and where we want to put resources, but what is the impact of that? And what are the other things that we're going to have to back away from, right? Because inevitably, we would love it to just be able to do more, but it's not. And sometimes I feel like those are the challenging conversations that, as a board, you know, you don't want to have. You just want to ask for this, and you want to say, we really need to do this. But it's unfair to the administration and to the team to not also talk about, well, what is the cost of that? What is what are we going to have to do differently or do less of? And sometimes we should be doing less of other things and doing less of other things that maybe are benefiting a historically privileged group, right? But we have to have those conversations. That's part of our board responsibility. So anyway, that's
No, thank you.
my perspective. And I think board service is, what beyond having my children and marrying my husband, because just in case he watches this, Omar will tell him if I don't say that, that, it was, I won't say all the time, but some of the time, one of the most challenging and fulfilling roles that I've ever felt like I could play in serving kids. And to me, I mean, again, I came from privilege because I'm white, but my mom never graduated high school. She raised me on her own. And the only reason I've been able to succeed was I focused on education. And I had the ability to make that jump. And what I was seeing is other kids can't. Like the cavern is just getting too big, but we can close it here. And so anyone who's interested in pursuing that passion and making that commitment, bring it on.
Thank you, Candace. And we're definitely interested in closing that cavern. So thank you. I know the advocates have questions, but I want to get to Omar first. And I want to thank Jude Laude, school board member from 202. He's watching with us. So thanks, Jude. And I see Nadona's watching with us on Facebook. We always appreciate our Facebook family, as well as our Radio La Difference family, for tuning in and sharing this information. That's what we're here to do. We want to bring the community resource information. Again, school board elections are coming up, and we're going to have Omar Brown talk about his experience. And Omar, give us some tips for people who are thinking about running for school board. Kind of maybe what should they do? How should they prepare? Give us some inside stuff.
Yeah, let me start with, thank you for having me here. And so I was on the school board for approximately, I think, three and a half years. I was in an interesting situation. I was selected to fill a vacant seat, and then I ran. So I feel like I got both sides of it. I will say, to be completely transparent, prior to me being on the school board, I wasn't a PTA member. My wife basically dragged me to parent-teacher conferences. I was one of those, I'm going to say, I believe an atypical parent in the community. I would go to work and go home and maybe check my kids' homework assignments, but my wife was absolutely more involved than I was. And so for me, even deciding to put my name in the hat was a different move. The idea behind it was I just felt there was a lack of representation. As a Black man in Evanston, I really wanted, I felt like if I did it, it would inspire other people to do it, especially, not being the PTA parent, not being at the school every day, not being like a volunteer coach. So as someone who is not involved with the system, I came in with, I think, a different view, is how I would really think about it. And it's interesting, Ms. Hill talked about the agenda. I came in, I would say, without an agenda other than trying to make the district better for, I would say, all students. And so I think coming in, I'm going to say a little bit cold, allowed me to have a different, like I couldn't tell you if the TWEET program was great or not great, or because I wasn't involved enough. So I had to come in and read about it, learn about it, and then tell you, is it something that I support or something that I think is impactful? Which I think is important for everyone, is to be able to take a step back, remove yourself from the situation and understand, is this the best for our community as a whole? Is this the best place for our dollars to go? In terms of, success in running, I would say it's a commitment, right? The reason why I left the board was when I started the board, I was working locally, you can say. And so I worked a 9 to 5, but I would go to an office every day. When I left the board, though, I was a consultant. So I was basically on the road. I would fly out Monday morning, come back Thursday night. And so this is pre-Zoom. And so, if you ever try to do a board meeting on a conference call, first of all, just trying to keep up with the voices is difficult. Doing it from a hotel room in some city, adds another layer of complexity. And then, depending on how my day was going, I might be going from a meeting to the board meeting to another meeting. And so it became too much for me. So I decided that, I needed to step down. So my first advice is understand the commitment that you're making. Understand that it is not some, I would say, a 1 hour a week, like meeting that you're going to. This is impactful work. It takes time. I remember, one of my advices I would say is set up a schedule of how you're going to do your work. So I would read my board book, and then I would actually try to read the whole thing and then go back and think about what are the pieces of information in it that I want to either ask a question about, speak on, or just dig a little bit deeper. And so I would say you have to develop a cadence, so that way this becomes part of your schedule of life, so that way you can tackle it and it's not an afterthought. So that's first. I would say if you're going to run, you should find someone who's either run before or someone who knows what it's like to run a campaign. And it was interesting when I ran, I had some advice from an alderman, and someone told me, aldermen are great, but they're not running citywide. They're running in their one pocket of the city. They don't know what it's like to have to go to every single ward. They don't know what it's like to go to every pocket. They don't know what it's like to really canvass across the whole community to garner support. And so I would say it's real life to run for the school board. And I suggest, I'm not saying you need to hire a professional. I'm saying you need to meet someone who at least has done it before so they can give you advice. I had really good advice. I had people who I didn't know I met at the time, and they certainly, helped me everything from how do you get a yard sign together to doing buttons to should I knock on every door to where are the events that I need to be at. I would say if you are going to run, have your story together. Like, why are you running? When someone asks, why are you running? You should be able to say why you're running. It should be concise. It should be consistent. It should be impactful. And so it shouldn't be you're running because there's a vacant seat or, because you want to change a program. You really need to have some thought into this and understand why you're running. And I would say it should be real, because if you win, people are going to expect you to then act on what you said you were running for. And so there's a piece of that I've talked to some people before, and what I've tried to tell them is that story doesn't resonate with me, right? Like, if that's really why you're running, you need to go back and refine that and really think about, is that really why you're running? And so that's one piece, is really take the time. I think, and I touched on it, you really do need to go to every corner of the community. And I would say there's going to be some difficult conversations on the board, so you get used to having them in your community ahead of time. You're going to make decisions that people are not going to like. Get used to being able to tell people why you have that stance and why you feel that way. And really, I would try to say, let them understand it's not necessarily about them or about that particular thing. It's about the school board as a whole. In terms of challenges, I think that was one of the things you asked me, what are some of my challenges? I mean, besides the timing, I think the challenge is, and this is probably just government doesn't move as fast as everyone wants it to move. And so understanding that there's a governance process and there's, just steps that happen before things change, I think it's really hard for people to understand. And I think that's a challenge as a board member. For me, I think one of the things about board members, I wish every board member would understand, is we don't run the district, and Candance talked about it, right? We're not the administrator. We're not the superintendent. And so understanding what governance is as opposed to managing, I think, is really a struggle for most board members, right? Board members come in with an idea of, I'm going to make this change, or basically I'm going to run this. Like, it needs to be a different perspective. And it's really, I think, a challenge for them to understand their role versus the administration's role. So I'll pause there. I don't know if I was timing myself.
No, you're good. And that was some great advice. So we really appreciate that. I want to get to the advocates to let them ask a couple of questions. And I also want to let you know that after the show, we will run the video about school board elections. We'll only run a really small clip and refer you over to the YouTube link where you can watch it in full. Historically, school board elections have not had a great turnout, so we're going to hope that people really turn out. The school board is an important board in our community, so we really want to turn out for those elections. It'll be interesting running a campaign, Omar, in the pandemic this year. So it's gonna be really different. So I'm gonna let Glenn. I know Glenn is jumping over there for a question. I'm gonna let Glenn ask the question, and then we'll go, I believe, to Marquise.
Hello to you guys that served on the board. I noticed that a lot of people in the community look at the school board and feel that they're not fiscally coherent or responsible. And we look at our taxes, and District 65 and 202 takes a large chunk out of our taxes. And for me, I can't figure out why we even have two separate districts. And I'm finding more and more that the both districts don't really communicate like they should with each other when it comes to supporting agendas. It's like, well, 202 has this, 65 has that, and we're not going to bend, when you kind of need to join forces and really communicate with each other a lot better. But can you just tell me why it is that we have two separate tax districts like that?
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Even though I wasn't on the school board, I was an administrator during we had these cycles between Evanston and Skokie. When we want to separate part of Skokie from Evanston, that's always a cycle. And then we have a cycle in which we talk about combining the two school boards. And it just so happens that the last time it was a major cycle, I was in the midst of it. It may have happened since I left, but when I was there as the assistant superintendent, there was a move by the board to, first of all, look at having one superintendent for the two districts. And that fell apart. And that's because when you look at from an educational perspective, elementary districts need one set of things and high school districts need another set of things. And so having the plan was, and I don't mind saying names, the plan was that Alan Olson would be the superintendent of the two districts, and then I would be running the elementary district, and he would have someone else running the high school district. It was fiscally irresponsible. That was the first point, because in order to do that, the high school district, which is smaller than the elementary district in terms of numbers and staffing, in order to get to pay teachers, you would have to elevate the elementary school teacher's salary to where the high school teacher's salary was. And again, that immediately kind of raised the question in terms of finances. The second thing has to do with focus. At an elementary district, the focus is different. At the high school, a lot more sports inactive, a lot more college prep kinds of situations. And so by having the two separate districts, it really allows the community to focus on the needs at the elementary level versus the needs at the high school level. The third part was we worked very, very, very hard, and I'm not sure what the status is, but we worked very hard at coordinating and working together as a district. When Laura Cooper was there and she was assistant superintendent and I was assistant superintendent, we were paired like Mutt and Jeff. We did a lot of things across the two districts. Some of that is administration. Some of that is board providing the environment for the administration. And as Candance talked about, kind of really demanding that that happens, but it runs in cycles here in Evanston. And like I said, I was in the district for 24 years. And that conversation, I'm not sure that we ever came out and explained to the public, that we were transparent to the public about the why two separate districts in this community worked better than we could perceive one district working for Evanston. Works well someplace else, but we did not believe that it was going to be successful and work as well for our community.
Ms. Hill, thank you for your transparency. Marquise, before we get to you, I know Ms. Betty, did you have a question?
Could I just add something to that?
Sure.
So to Deborah's point, I will say that one of the big efforts of our two boards when I started on the board was to we went through processes of, is there anything short of actual unification that you could do? And there are a lot of things. It's really challenging operationally. It's like having two different bosses, right? Like if you have two individual superintendents, one option would be to report to a single board, right? But having two different boards, we really tried the approach we took was having, and was taking a very long time. I do think, my personal opinion is that a unified districts actually perform better for students if you look at the data. Doesn't mean that in our particular instance it might be the right answer. So to get away from the actual question there, it was really the efforts of the board setting priorities that you want to work more together. And that's really critical, but it's also something that is an opportunity cost, meaning it takes time, effort, initiative. I think the challenge we're going to have coming out of COVID is getting back to that, because now, I don't believe actually the current boards have met this year at all together. And usually we had two meetings a year that were joint meetings with the two boards, coming up with common metrics, because at the end of the day, these are the same kids, right? And there's a lot of evidence in my mind, and I'm just respectfully disagree with Debra, that if you're going to invest the money, investing it earlier pays off in the long term for kids. And so looking at, the trajectory of students is what we were trying to focus on. And it's not you did this or you did that, but how are we both working together for students? So I think that was a big emphasis, and everything takes cycles. We're going to have to reignite that of working collectively after COVID, because folks are really heads down and how do you serve students in your own districts. But I think that actually should get elevated again. And it's always, it's a great deal of time and effort that goes into working collaboratively and collectively across two districts. It takes a lot of time and effort, but I think that it's worth it in the long term.
Okay, thank you. Betty?
So I think that we know that for children to be productive with their educational growth and development, that we need their families to be engaged in that process. How can school board members engage with the families in the community to get them more invested with their child's education? This question is for anyone that has any ideas about what we can do to help our families become more invested in their child's education for earlier on, not waiting until they're in high school, but at a elementary school level.
I mean, I'll just throw something out there. Good question, Betty. I would say as a school board member, I would expect your role to be to engage those parents in the community and really help them understand the benefit of the services that the school district provides. And I used to say this thing that, a success of a student is like a three-legged stool. It's, it takes the community, it takes the school, and it takes the household. And those three need to be aligned and connected. And as a school board member, I feel like that's the piece that connects all of those. And so whether it's, reaching out individually or leveraging community groups or leveraging, school groups, I would say as a school board member, you have to be a voice to be that advocate, to, actually highlight what the district can do. To the question about finances and taxes, I would say we're in a resource-rich district. I mean, I think that, I don't know if a lot of people realize, we have a lot of resources in this district. And I think a lot of times it's not, I would say, being promoted or well aware for everyone to know that those resources is there. And whether those resources are in the district or cradle to career, I mean, it's just as a community, we have the ability to support our students. I think we need to make sure that families are aware of those opportunities, and that as a school board member, I'm hoping that you're out in the community talking about those opportunities, meeting people where they are, and really trying to be that voice. So that, I would say, that's a responsibility of the school board member. That is one of the responsibilities, is to be out there and be that advocate.
Thank you, Omar. And of course, I don't know how much our guests know about the Advocates for Action, but though that's, one of our goals as well, to make sure community has information, to know that there's resources, and then how to navigate those resources. Because you can know about them, but you have to know how to use them. All right, so we're going to our last advocate. We have a lot of advocates on the line, but we do want to make sure we have a few minutes for the video. But we're going to have Advocate Marquise Witherspoon come on and speak with us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Community Coffee this Saturday. I've been waiting all month for this. Obviously, this is very exciting, and looking up them and just what are the responsibilities and commitment for a good school board member. I've made up in my mind that I'm going to run. So I've taken the necessary steps. Where that came from, one was, as my children have gone through the district, I recognized that it was not the same district that I came from. And not to say that it's worse, or not to say that it's better, but it's just not the same. I feel like when I was coming through District 65 for community, but there's a different demographic of people now. So Ms. Betty just asked a great question, and she said, how do we get the my age group? And this is just having conversation with, my friends and then other people in the community. It's just that they don't feel like the people that sit on the board look like that they don't go through the same things it's through. They don't be, like it is coming from a place of where they can relate to them on a personal level. So that led me to then say that, you know what, this is my age group, and this is my part of the community. I feel like I can be able to engage them because I have relationship in the community and family focus, and I say that any chance that I get a chance to speak, I always make it a point to say that I'm a family focused kid, because that taught me a lot of the morals and the values that I have today. So going into being the president of Advocates for Action, I would have never thought that I could even accomplish anything like this. But Ms. Holmes has told me my entire life that I am somebody. So taking on this leadership role in the community has been one step. But then even going further, after I realized the challenges and the disconnect that my age group feels like they have with the districts, I felt like my responsibility to then get engaged and to be able to relay the information to them in a way that they could understand. So that I said to that's when I decided that I was going to run for school board, because I care about my community and all of the children in my community. I love Evanston, and I love being a part of everything that goes on in Evanston. It is one of the most equitable cities to live in. Yes, we have our ups and downs. Yes, we have our challenges, just like anywhere else. But you have to know that Evanston is a wonderful place to live in, and our district. So my decision to run for school board was rooted in my desire to serve. I want to serve the future of our community, our children, the muffled voices of our community, the parents, and the driving force of our community, the teachers, an Evanstonian and a proud product of District 65, I know it's my obligation to be an advocate for the effective changes needed in our educational environment. I know firsthand the challenges that come along with navigating the system and barriers in our school system. My strong convictions around student equity and family empowerment, along with my ambition, spell success for the entire district and the entire community of Evanston. All I'm asking is for a seat at the table. So when April comes, I hope that everyone, don't hold me accountable, one, and two, don't just vote for me because you know me. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if there's something that I have gained some knowledge about and that you need some information about, and that I'm able to deliver to you in a way that you feel comfortable being able to be involved in your children's education. I want nothing more than to be a voice for the community and also to serve my community. So I'm circulating my petitions right now, and prayerfully I will be on the ballot so that you guys can vote for me in April. And all I can say is I will do my very best and give it my 110% to serve the wonderful community that I've lived in for over 30 years.
What an exciting way to end this series, Jennifer Moran. Thank you, Evanston Community Foundation, for providing this platform for the Public Service Challenge. You heard it here first. Our own advocate, Marquise Weatherspoon, will be running for the school district. We are super excited. And I hope you are too. You've watched her with us over these last couple of years, leading in the community through the advocates, and we want to uplift you and uphold you in this run for school board. Thank you, Debra Hill, Omar Brown, and Candance Chow for joining us this morning and enlightening us on all things school board. Thank you, advocates. Thank you, Radio La Difference. Please stay tuned for a few minutes of the school board clip from Evanston Community Foundation, and then you can watch it on the YouTube channel. All right, have a happy, safe Saturday. It's Thanksgiving, pre-Thanksgiving weekend. Please be safe. Do a Zoom Thanksgiving. Stay safe. We'll see you next Saturday. We'll still be here.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Move.
Hello, I'm Candance Chow, and I have served on the school board of District 65 for about 7 years, from 2013 to 2020, earlier this year. I'm going to be speaking about kind of what it takes to be an effective board member based on my experience and those of colleagues that I've seen and admired over the course of the years. So I really want to talk about 5 points of being an effective board member. Being a good board member is a lot about answering and asking a lot of questions. But at the very top of the list of questions is, what is best for kids? That's guiding everything we do. But specifically, being a good board member, I've seen has these 5 components. The first is knowing the difference between and wanting to operate at the governance versus a management level. And this is not easy. Governance is about ends. It's about policy, values, goals, priorities, and resource allocation. Management is about means. And oftentimes, boards stray into that means or operations and away from the policy And what I've seen is we do it for two main reasons. First, we pursue what's most familiar to us. So if we have expertise in a certain area, we want to talk about that, or we want to lend our expertise. Or if we lose faith in the superintendent or the administration, we stray away from our governance role. But being a governing board versus a managing board is really core to serving as an effective board member. The second part about being an effective board member is engaging the community. So what does that mean? It means reaching out to groups that are impacted by decisions, not just those folks who come to you, but going to folks to understand their perspective and their interest. It means listening and then processing information. For me, has also meant coming to the board with maybe priorities or specific values and goals, but not an agenda. And I think lastly, it's about being transparent and open. We hear a lot of reference to full transparency, and transparency is critical. But we also have to acknowledge that to be an effective board member, there are some times when you can't be truly transparent with the public. And that's related to personnel issues or potentially bargaining issues, which are both critical aspects of being an effective board member, because you're working with and trying to make the most of the staff and the administration and the resources that you have. So the third piece I have around effective board membership is effective board members, in my mind, engage in a dialogue as a board with inputs from lots of stakeholders and staff and community. But I'll stress the part about engaging in a dialogue. We take responsibility for, in a board meeting, explaining our thinking and our perspective. We bring our personal experience, and we know that that's relevant and important. And yet our policies that we form are based on a broader set of inputs and evidence from lots of different stakeholders, lots of different places. Our meetings are in the public, and they benefit the public, but they're not for the public. And this one was hard for me to get my head around in the beginning. Of course, we're there to serve the public, but in a board meeting, when you're operating in public, you're still there to thoughtfully engage one another in decisions based on inputs that you get from the community, from the administration, from your employees, from educators, et cetera. But you're there to thoughtfully engage one another and to make decisions so that you can grow and reach consensus wherever possible on these issues and learn from one another. And so you also know each other, where each other is coming from as you move forward to getting the impact that you want, which is, again, is what's best for kids. My fourth point about being an effective board member is that as an effective board member, you do need to adopt an equity lens to your decision making, and also maintain a commitment to providing quality education for all children. And those things can work and do work hand in hand. Maintaining and adopting an equity lens means that you are looking at the impact of each decision or policy or program that's before you from the perspective of, how is this going to impact children of color? How is this going to impact children with special needs? How is this going to impact children of families with reduced income? And you're bringing that discussion to the table, and you're making sure that you've thought through those impacts. And if you don't know the answers to those questions, that you go to the people that do have the answers to those questions before you ultimately make your decision. And then my last point, being an effective board member, the fifth and final tip is, seems very simple, but it's probably the most difficult piece of board membership. And that, in my mind, I believe effective board members force and make difficult choices. So a lot of times as board members, we can speak out to what we want, where we want to spend more money, what programs we want to invest in. It is also our duty to speak about what that impact has on other programs and other policies, and where we're going to pull back from our investments. Those are really hard choices, and they're not ones that we are comfortable. No one wants to make a choice between one good thing and another good thing, right? We want to have both. And sometimes we can have both, but not all the time, especially when you're dealing with, constrained resources, constrained time. We have to make choices that we think are going to have the most impact. And we have to explain why we're putting resources in one place, and also then talk about what's the adverse effect of that decision, what could potentially happen, and what are the things that we might have to step back from, so the community understands the full impact and effect of the decisions that we're making. So those are the 5 kind of points I believe it takes to be an effective board member, or 5 aspects of being an effective board member. And I thank you for participating in this process, and wish you the very best of luck as you run for a school board or any other public service opportunity. It is humbling, and it comes with great gratitude for being able to serve the community, and also a better understanding of how difficult these choices and these processes can be. But we know we all do it because we want the very best for kids and their education. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Omar Brown. I'm a former member of Evanston's District 65 School Board. I was on the board approximately 3.5 to 4 years, and I want to talk to you today about the role of a school board member. So a school board member provides local citizens control over education at a point as close to the parent and child as possible. And what that means is, as a school board member, you are really there to enlist and make sure that the voice of your community is heard in decisions made about education in that district. It is by far one of the most challenging and rewarding roles that a citizen can play. A school board member hires a district superintendent. And by hires, I think I should really say you evaluate potential candidates and determine / vote on the candidate that you feel will be the strongest superintendent for your district. There is, I would say, no role more important for a district than the superintendent. As a leader, drives things like culture and accountability throughout the whole district. A school board member evaluates that superintendent's work and holds them accountable for district performance and compliance with board policy. When you think about what that means, it means that after we hire a superintendent, we want to make sure that whatever their goals are, whatever their aspirations, that we hold them accountable, and that we also hold them accountable for educating our students, making sure that the performance of our students does not dip, and that they comply with the board policies and regulations that have been created. A school board member votes at public meetings, and I feel like it shouldn't just be votes, but attends, participates, and really helps drive the decision-making process for that district. Voting in the meetings means that you provide a voice to your constituents, but also that you're making a lasting impact for all the students in that district. I decided to run for the school board mainly due to a lack of representation of Black males on the board, or involved, I would say, in education from a political standpoint. I wanted to be a role model to others. I wanted to inspire others to participate. I wanted to make sure that there was a voice at the table. I wanted to make sure that my district at least understood that there are Black men that want to support education, want to be involved in education, and also want to make a difference. I hope that I was able to inspire others to do that, and I hope that I can inspire you to run as well. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and good luck with your campaign.
My name is Jonathon Baum. I've had the privilege of serving on both Evanston school boards, the District 65 Board of Education from 2003 to 2007, and the District 202 Board of Education from 2011 to 2019. The Public Service Challenge has asked me to address 4 aspects of school board service: how to move toward conflicts resolution, the role of the community, decision-making, and transparency. With regard to conflict resolution, let me begin by saying that there's nothing wrong with having conflict on the school board. To the contrary, if the complex, serious issues that a school board confronts are to be dealt with in all their seriousness and complexity, conflict is inevitable. To be managed appropriately, conflict should reflect policy disagreements and be based on a common set of facts. Conflicts should never be personal. Board members should never question each other's motives or integrity. To the contrary, in arguing with each other, board members should always assume each other's good faith. There's also nothing wrong with displaying these conflicts to the public. Concealing genuine policy differences from the public is both in violation of the Open Meetings Act and contrary to good governance. Tempting as it may be to maintain a united front, it does not serve your constituents well to pretend to them that real disagreements over policy do not exist. It is condescending to assume your stakeholders cannot handle this. Conflict should be resolved by thoughtful, courteous argumentation. Sometimes this will be quite time-consuming, but conflict resolution can't be rushed. Ideally, conflicts will be resolved through consensus, but often this is not possible, and the conflict must be resolved through a vote by a divided board. There's nothing wrong with this. But those on the losing end of a vote, while they can continue to express their opinions, must respect the authority of the board's decision the same as if it were unanimous. On the role of the community, I think the appropriate question for a prospective school board member is not what the role of the community is, but what is your role with respect to the community? Actually, this is a dual role: to communicate information from the school district to the community, and to communicate information from the community to the school district. With regard to the first role, you should work as hard as you can to disseminate as much information as possible about what is happening in your district. You can do this through prodding your school administration to be transparent and proactive, getting your board as a whole to be the same, and through your own individual efforts. An informed community will be a supportive community. While it is tempting to disseminate only positive information, trust your constituents to be able to deal with the same hard facts you as a board member have to. With regard to the second role, it is easy when you are sitting in the boardroom, surrounded by your fellow members and school administrators, often with few or no members of the public in attendance. It is easy to forget that these people in the room are not your constituents. Your constituents are the school community, defined most broadly: parents, students, taxpayers, and teachers. You need to listen to them, both individually and collectively. And it is not enough to sit around passively waiting to hear from them. You need to reach out, both as a board member, as a board collectively, and as an individual, to find out what members of the community, again broadly defined, are thinking about the issues coming before your board. Make sure your board holds periodic community listening sessions, and that members of the community know how to get in touch with you and your fellow board members. In the area of decision making, the school district actually makes 2 kinds of decisions: those that are in the province of the board and those that are in the province of the superintendent or their designee. These 2 different types of decisions are often characterized by the aphorism, the board decides the what and the superintendent decides the how. You will hear this a lot as a new school board member, but it is really much too simplistic. At the extremes, decisions are easy to categorize. For example, the decision of whether to create a new position is clearly the board's, while the decision of who should fill that position is clearly the superintendent's. But the vast in-between is more complicated. For example, while the superintendent will recommend the awarding of a contract to a particular vendor, by law, all significant contracts must be approved by the board. In the area of curriculum, the distinction between the what and the how is even murkier. You could say, well, the board should just say, teach these subjects and teach them well and leave the rest to the superintendent. But boards and superintendents in Evanston have long recognized that major curricular decisions need community buy-in, and the board speaks for the community. To take some examples, when I was on the District 65 board, we adopted, after considerable debate, both TWE and the African-centered curriculum. Similarly, the District 202 board again, after considerable debate, restructured freshman English, history, and biology curricula to eliminate straight honors classes. Theoretically, these were hows, not whats, but treating them that way would not have been good public policy. Because of this uncertainty, there will always be some tension between a superintendent and their board over who gets to make certain decisions. The course of least resistance for a board member is to defer to the superintendent. That's the easiest course, but frequently not the wisest. In making your call on this as a board member, remember to whom you are accountable, the community. If you think that the interests of the community demand that the board weigh in on a decision, then fight for that. This may cost you some points with the superintendent, and even with some of your fellow board members. That's the cost of true public service. Finally, on transparency. The public policy of the state of Illinois is that public business must be conducted in public. This is secured by two laws, the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act. The Freedom of Information Act opens to public scrutiny documents that reflect government officials doing public business, and the Open Meetings Act requires that meetings about government business be held in public. Both of these laws make some very limited exceptions to the general rule of transparency. For school boards, the most pertinent exceptions are for discussing individual employees or students and for discussing litigation. It is your responsibility as a school board member to ensure that the transparency required by law is honored in your meetings, emails, etc. It is all too easy to slip in both closed meetings of the board and emails into discussing matters that are not properly shielded from public disclosure. When you insist on transparency, you may get pushback from fellow board members and/or administrators that you are being too rigid or legalistic about this. Take the heat, but do not relent. Again, remember that it is the public to whom you are accountable. Good luck with your campaigns.
I'm murdered.
Listening to Evanston Cradle to Career Advocates for Action on Radio La Difference. Please tune in next Saturday for another show.